Good morning, all. I, Mrs. Darshana Yadav, Assistant Professor, MES IMCC, extend my warm welcome to one and all on third day of online FDP on Artificial Intelligence for Education, hosted by IMCC. Few words about IMCC. IMCC is a premier management institute which is recognized by Savitribai Phule, Pune University, SPPU, and AICT New Delhi to conduct MCA program. Our MCA program is accredited by National Board of Accreditation (NBA). IMCC is recognized PhD research center under the Faculty of Commerce and Management SPPU. We do have MBA, BBA, BBA-CA, and BBA-IB courses. The total strength on campus of student is around 1,000. They say algorithms are becoming powerful arbiters of our lives. No matter how advanced our algorithms, the stark reality of Indian higher education is that it is not digital data driven. Therein lies one of our greatest challenges as educators and administrators, that how do we generate the data needed by early alerts algorithms that utilize machine learning and artificial intelligence. So here is the title of today's first session, that is feeding the algorithm, generating the data needed for AI based performance alerts. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to introduce you today's eminent speaker of this session, Mr. Vaibhav Vashisht. He is a co-founder at Acetone Designs and Academy, a platform that helps professors engage students and automate attendance in online and in-person classrooms, helping professors create interactive, efficient, and data-driven learning experiences that students love. He is an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and IIM Calcutta and launched Academy with his IIT Kanpur batchmate Prashant Gautam in 2017. With this introduction, I invite Vaibhav Vashisht sir to deliver his talk. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Darshana, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Vaidya sir. Thank you so much, Mukul sir, for the opportunity and for all the assistance. Uh, Congratulations, first of all, for what has been a fantastic FDP so far. I had the opportunity to audit some of the sessions over the last 2 days, and the level of expertise, the level of knowledge has all been fantastic. And I'm sure the participants are all also benefiting tremendously from this. So, and good morning to everyone joining from all parts of the country. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to attend the FTP, to attend this session in particular. So my name is Vaibhav Vashisht. I'm one of the co-founders at a company named Acadly. That's ACADLY. And like Darshana ma'am mentioned in the introduction, uh, I, we started working on Acadly in 2015. So we're now 5 years old as a company, but as a product, we're more like 3 years old. So we launched Acadly in fall 2017. That's about July and August 2017. And at this time, when we had launched Acadly, it's fair to say education was a fundamentally different field. In fact, it's fair to say that education was a fundamentally different field till March of this year. We all know the upheaval that has been created by COVID. We all know the changing circumstances. And there is practically nobody who can claim to have escaped the consequences in some way, or not had to bear the upheaval that it has caused, and uh, what's the sort of consequences on both personal and professional fronts. Now, on your screen are the results of a poll, and this was just a warm up poll. Uh, so, the question was, "How are you doing today?" And the options. Well, I can tell that there is, at the very least, one completely honest participant among us today who has been candid enough to share that they didn't sleep too well and are somewhat tired. Holds true for me as well. So now the reason why I had the warm up poll up on the screen is because today's session is going to be interactive. I am going to request you to do a few things. The first is I'm going to request you to respond to certain polls. I am also going to just ask you some questions and request you to actually just respond to the question in the chat. So I would like you to, actually have this communication channel open throughout the session. On top of that, in case you have any questions in the middle of the presentation, just feel free to type out your question on the right side. I believe you are all muted right now, but in case you want to ask a question, uh, can the participants also use a raise hand functionality here, sir? Is that
Yes,
possible?
yes.
Perfect, perfect. So if you do have a question, please feel free to uh, raise your hand and ask us a question. I am, compared to the session so far, and this is not me being humble. This is just plain facts. I am not the biggest expert in artificial intelligence, but what I do, and what we do as a company, is think of this as, you go to a car expo, and invariably you'll find this one booth in the expo that's talking about, maybe the tires. You'll find probably a Seat tires and an MRF tires shop somewhere on the side. You might find a company selling airbags. You might, find a company that focuses on fancy car interiors. And these are components that go into building the car. So I'm not the Mercedes vendor myself, but what I do is something which enables Mercedes to do what they do best, right? And the title of the session, once again, is feeding the algorithm and generating the data needed for uh, student alerts, AI based student success alerts. Now, just to dive into the presentation a little bit, I want to mention a few things here. Now, as I go through the presentation today, uh, once again there will be certain polls. So it would be fantastic if you could share your responses to the polls, because that will help shed some light on on how we are doing, on whether or not you're able to follow what's being spoken about, and it'll give me feedback that. And I've this isn't a presentation where I necessarily have a script. I have a general script, but this isn't really for me to uh, you know go through a bunch of slides. This is for me to understand you, and sort of try and do the best we can with this hour or so that we have. In the presentation, I will also have a short demonstration of a product of a Cadley itself, the product that I represent. And we also have, by the way, on the call, Prashant Gautam, and he is the person who has developed the product, and he has led the development from scratch when there were no lines of code and there were no designs, to where it is today, where it's available across three platforms, and there are multiple more aspects to the product. So we have, like, if you have like a really technical question, Prashant may be able to help us out and save me from a really technical question. I lead the sales and marketing team at Acetone Design. So with that introduction, I just start sharing my screen, and just give me a moment. Now I'm going to try and put this up. All right. So I hope you can all see my screen right now. So once again, the title of the session is Feeding the Algorithm, generating the data needed for AI-based performance alerts. Uh, Now, what we're going to cover, and I've just gone through a brief introduction to myself. My email address is up on the screen, and I'm always happy to take the conversation beyond the session that we're having. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. So here's the brief agenda. Firstly, we'll have a discussion on student success. We'll have a, what does student success mean? I mean, the term itself sort of gives a general idea, but we'll look into what the experts believe is the right definition for student success. We'll also touch upon how AI can help the student success issue, how universities, institutions can leverage AI-based technologies to further their student success initiatives. We will then move on to the complicated question of generating quality data. And we look into why it's a complicated question as well. Why do I call it a complicated question, generating data? Should it not be a straightforward thing? Do we not do that already? I will then briefly touch upon how Academy can assist data-driven teaching and learning, and then what are the applications of what we call data-driven teaching and learning. Okay, so this poll you've already answered, as we saw, about 50 of you. Now, most of you are doing perfectly well, wide awake, had your coffee. Uh, I have another poll, and I'd be grateful, Mukul sir, if you could just have the poll up on the screen. So during the FDP today, have you identified any AI applications that you want to start working on? And the poll is up on the screen now. Uh, during the FTP, you've all obviously gone through a number of AI applications, and some of them uh, simple enough, some of them a little complicated. Have you identified something that you want to start working on, that okay, this is a problem, and I can possibly apply AI here, can possibly just sort of use the knowledge that we've gained over the last few days, uh, and maybe do something with it rather than just attend these sessions, maybe go beyond the session and use that knowledge and apply it to a problem that I want to solve. So how many of you have uh, you know identified already an AI application that you want to start working on? So I can see there are 63 attendees. I'm guessing about 53 attendees, more like about 10 of us are probably from the administration, management, presentation side, and we have about 30 votes in so far. I'd be grateful if the others, if you are on a different tab, just come over to Zoom for a second. You'll find this poll over there. And it would be nice to have your feedback before we proceed further on this particular question. Okay, now, uh, so again, I'll just repeat the question. It is up on the screen as well. It is written in the poll dialog also. During the FTP, have you identified any AI applications that you want to start working on so far? And we'll just have this poll up for another maybe 10 more seconds, Mukul sir. And after that, we'll close the poll itself.
Sure.
If you're familiar with the if you're familiar with the IPL at all, you can hear like, there is a strategic timeout during IPL, and then there's a countdown. All right. So now we have the results up on the screen. They were about, you can see 35 responses. 54% of you said, yes, you've already identified an AI application that you want to start working on. And about 46% of you said no, that you haven't. I mean, so far at least. I mean, not to say that you will not or that you do not intend to. You just have not. So far, you have not identified an AI application that you want to start working on. Now, I'm just going to stop sharing the results for a moment now. Okay, so what did we do just now? We had like about 63 participants here. Uh, and this is, again, I mean, this is not to really, say that somebody is not paying attention or, point fingers. But what did we do? Uh, let's say I'm a teacher, I wake up, I have a morning 9 a.m. class. I see 60 of my students have joined, and I just shared an activity. I just have 35 responses. What's really happening in the class, right? Are the others like, did they just like log in from their bed, just went to the Zoom call? But please do not take any of whatever I'm saying otherwise. And I have nothing but respect for all professors. And but what we did just now was an exercise in student success in not one but two ways. Firstly, uh, the fact that the responses are not 100% is not unexpected. I did not expect there to be like 53 responses. About 70 or 80% of you, probably responded to the poll, and that's par for the course. That gives me, a sense of, okay, here's a poll, and of course, there's so many people in the meeting, but how many of us are actively engaged with the meeting? And again, I mean, this could be entirely because of the presenter. Maybe the presenter needs to just step back and take a hard look at themselves and be like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I losing people's interest in the middle of the meeting? I mean, what really is going wrong? What's happening to the other 20%? They didn't respond. If, let's say, you don't respond right now, well, it's all right. I mean, maybe you're facing a connectivity issue, maybe it's something else. But let's say this starts becoming a pattern. Right now, I don't know, by the way, who's responded, who are the participants, etc., etc. But let's say I figure out, okay, here's a few people who just don't seem to respond. I'm doing like polls, I'm doing my presentations, I'm doing quizzes. There's this chat box on the right. I never see a message from them. There's this raise hand feature, and they never raise their hand. What's happening with the student? If this becomes a pattern, does that tell you something about the student? The second thing is the question itself is framed as a student success question. So the question, once again, just to go back, was, during the FTP, have you identified any AI applications you want to start working on? If I were to ask the organizers today, okay, what's your objective with the FTP in like 15 or fewer words? Probably the objective that they would state would be, well, we want people to attend these sessions and then go back and build something that leverages AI in education to further student outcomes, right? Maybe something of that sort, maybe something different, right? But we would ideally like the faculty who are attending these sessions to identify an AI application that they want to start working on. Now, this is just intent, by the way, right? This is just intent. I mean, we are a few levels away from when you actually start working, when you actually run into the problems after you start working, when you solve those problems after you start working, and then when you come up with an alpha product, you come up with a beta product, and so on and so forth. We are right now simply at a interest and intent stage. Now, if, let's say, at the end of these 10 days, at the end of these 4 or 5 days of the FTP, not 10 days, my bad. If this question is posed, right, and it looks like, the responses are somewhat similar. I guess what, 46% said that they have not been able to identify any AI applications so far. Uh, if, let's say, that number is still at something like 46%, again, that's a student success insight. Now, here was the outcome that we needed. We've needed people to go back from the FTP and do something with the knowledge that they've gained in the few days. And then at the end of it, you say, okay, turns out 46% haven't even been able to identify a problem. So let alone creating something, there is no identification. It looks like, uh, they have just not met the desired learning outcome, right? And in your courses, it could be something extremely different, right? You're maybe teaching a mechanical engineering course, maybe a technical arts course, maybe an electrical engineering course, maybe a management course in finance, maybe, or marketing, maybe. And your learning outcomes would obviously be starkly different from this FTP's learning outcomes. And by the way, the learning outcomes of this FTP are super high order. If you look at the Bloom's taxonomy, pyramid, this is right up there at create, right? You want people to go back and create things, and that's a difficult learning outcome. You don't want people to just write a test. If I were to say, at the end of this FDP there will be an objective test, I mean, that's not maybe the best way to judge success. Maybe something like this is. So 46% is not bad, but at the end of this, that's a metric. That's a metric that all presenters and all organizers can work with. Okay, next year, when we do the same thing, or maybe 6 months down the line, or maybe 2 years down the line, whenever, when we do the same thing with a different group of people, we want that number to go up from 46%, go down rather, the number of people who said no, which was about 46%. We want that number to go down from 46% to, I don't know, 30%, and that tells us that we've actually succeeded in one of the things that we wanted to achieve with the FTP as an instructor, as the participant. So that was just the point that I wanted to make with the poll, that every time you engage your students, you engage your audience, you generate insights. In one way or the other, you can come up with certain insights. And that data is really just rich. It's really something that you immediately get insight into, like, okay, I had 63 people. I have, 75 participants right now. Uh, how many of them said this? How many of them said that? I mean, I could go on and on about talking to people, asking them any questions, If you have any questions, please unmute yourself. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Probably two or three, maybe that's the number of people I will end up engaging. But when you go to market, and I'm talking now in marketing terms, being a sales and marketing guy myself, when you go to market, that's the power of surveys. That's the power of these short assessments, that you can engage a lot of people and you can generate a lot of data with very little friction in a very short amount of time. So, okay, now this is what we did. So student success is what we did. This poll was an exercise in student success, which is here. I just copied this definition. This is not original at all. I don't want to mess up something that people have written after a ton of research. So student success includes strong retention and degree completion rates, and also high quality learning, and some emphasis on high quality. It means that students are prepared for success in their personal, civic, and professional lives, and that they embody the values and behaviors that make their institution distinctive. That's how we define student success. It is, I picked up this particular definition, compared to certain others, because this is holistic. It just makes sense to me as a person, that when you talk about success, it cannot just be how many, did you pass or fail, did you get an A or a B. It's a definition that's incredibly difficult, to sometimes measure. You might, your student might turn 50 and then turn out to be a criminal, and then you can say, okay, well, where did I go wrong? Years and years down the line, it's incredibly difficult to measure. It's a lifelong metric. It's not just something that you can get at the end of the fourth year, but you can get close at the end of the fourth year. And that's the endeavor of all of us as educators, isn't it? That at the end of 4 years, we should be able to say, well, here's potential, and let's see what they can do with it for the rest of their lives. But here's somebody, and this is what we spot in them. Here's their potential. So that's student success defined. And it's important that this definition is stays with us for the rest of the presentation, because, to be honest, what we will focus on is the first sentence. Strong retention and degree completion rates, and also high quality learning. We will focus a bit on the the measurable parameters, grades and pass fail, etc., that sort of thing, a little bit today. The second part, however, is probably even more important. All right, so okay, now here, over here, is another poll. And Mukul sir, I'd be grateful if you could share the third poll up on the screen. What do you think are the major reasons for poor student performance? So now over here, I just, this question, there are a bunch of things over here, and I'll just list them down. Absence of motivation, lack of effort, personality issues with the students, lack of perseverance or lack of like sustained hard effort, and uh, right, and you can select multiple, by the way. In this particular poll, please select all the reasons that you think. I mean, this is not a select one kind of a poll. You can select multiple responses here. So just want to make sure that all of you understand this particular poll. You can pick multiple options. It's not just a one option kind of a poll. If you could just give us a second. All right. Mukusa, have you got to relaunch the poll? All right. So it's up on the screen again. Uh, Sir, can attendees select multiple points this time? I think they can. I think they can. All right. So once again, the question is, what do you think are the major reasons for poor student performance? And you can select multiple options as well. Uh, so these are the reasons listed: absence of motivation, lack of effort, personality issues, lack of perseverance on the students' behalf, that the students are not ready for college somehow, that the school system has failed them, poor educational system overall. I mean, it's not just the school system itself, it's just the way we perceive education as a society. Economic and domestic issues at the student's end. uh, Instruction is not fun and relatable, lack of facilities and support infrastructure. And if there's anything else, just go to the chat, please. And I would request you all to please do that. Uh, yeah, we do have a message over here, and I'm sorry that I missed the message. But I think Professor Vaibhavi Chavan had written about increasing project performance. This was probably with regards to, if I'm not mistaken, to what are the applications of AI. Now, if you think of any other issues other than the issues listed here, and just so can everyone chat with everyone in the meeting?
They can send you privately if you want. We can open
Yeah,
everybody.
can you please open it to everyone, the chat, if that's possible?
Done.
All right, everyone. So, thank you so much, Mukusa, for that. That's a lifesaver. So, okay, now in the chat, you can message everyone. So, I just want you to go to the chat. If you think of any other, factors other than those that are listed on the screen right now, uh, it would be fantastic if you could just go there and write in the chat what are the other factors that you think are some of the major reasons for poor student performance. If you think of any other reason other than those listed over here, if you think people are too distracted, if you think TikTok has destroyed this generation, if you think online education is the devil, if any of that comes to mind, if you think of other reasons, uh, that there's too much digital distraction, maybe there is just too much pressure because of COVID. If there's anything else, interest level saturation, interesting. All right, so yeah, I mean, if you think of anything else, and we just wait for another minute or so before we close this, and I'm just going to read the responses out. Your appointment of incompetent faculty members, got it. Lack of interest, got it. Okay, that they, I would say it's similar to absence of motivation, but yeah, interest. Negligence is also definitely, yeah, could definitely be that. I mean, there's no point. I mean, I was a student till not too long ago, so yeah, I mean, there is negligence. Okay. uh, Interesting, faculty members identify students by their castes. I mean, that's a very India specific issue, and it's a tremendous insight. uh yeah, got it, sir. By their caste. And yeah, I mean, it's a social evil that Somehow it hasn't left our country so far. Absolutely. Hunger to learn. All right. Perfect. Okay. So, lack of understanding the particular subject. Poor skills development, unavailability of good courses or colleges outside engineering and medicine, also less jobs in those areas. Perfectly valid. I would say there's no countering that particular point. Got it. So I'm just going to end the poll for a moment now and share the results with everyone. So I hope you can all see the poll results on your screen. And the number one issue was absence of motivation, which is an intrinsic issue, right? If you think about it, some of these issues are extrinsic, as in they relate to the world outside, and some of these issues are intrinsic, which means it's got everything to do with students and their motivations, and not necessarily with the world outside. So I mean, absence of motivation is intrinsic. Lack of effort, uh, well, it's I would say it's intrinsic as well. Personality issues with students, again, intrinsic. Lack of perseverance, intrinsic. Not ready for college is probably a little more extrinsic in nature. It's the school system that's responsible to get students ready for college. And if they're not ready, then who do you blame? Poor educational system, also extrinsic. Economic and domestic issues, again, the students don't have any control over their economic and domestic circumstances. And just like one of you mentioned about, that professors differentiate, identify their students and they discriminate against students based on their castes. I mean, that's the sort of issue that is extrinsic. The student has like no control over something like that. Instruction is not fun and relatable, also extrinsic, and lack of facilities and support infrastructure, also extrinsic. And you'll find a fair split, but uh, you'll notice that the top 2 points, absence of motivation and lack of effort, are winning hands down. Everybody, well, I mean, most of you believe that it's basically these things that are a hindrance to people performing well. And that's somehow, those are the 2 things. If we fix it, if we fix motivation, or if we fix, like, if we get people to put in more effort somehow, uh, via rules, maybe, it could be both. I mean, the motivation could come. Motivation also is a theory point in educational psychology, where uh, it basically says that intrinsic motivation works way better than extrinsic motivation. As in, you could say, that if you come to class, at the end of it, I will share with you a question that will be similar to the sort of a question that might appear in the exams, may or may not be, right? And or maybe, at the end of, maybe you're doing these polls during the class, and people really enjoy doing these polls or something like that. uh, and the student is like, well, I want to do this, and therefore I will attend. That's one way to get people to attend class. And the other is, well, less than 75% attendance and you will fail the course. That's a little bit extrinsic. Right now, that's the student is doing that uh, because they're being compelled, etc. So obviously educational psychology says the former is better, but I mean, motivation itself is a huge field, and 68% of you finding problem with motivation is an eye opener. Right now, the other thing, by the way, once again, this is how many responses did we have this time? Around 44 responses. We have about 80 participants, maybe 75. Again, this was just just to give you like a sort of a snapshot of, like, if you've been wondering who else is listening, that sort of data point can be useful for you as well. But okay, now I'm just going to stop sharing these results and just move on to the next slide, where here's the thing. There's I don't know, I mean, I'm a huge fan of rap. uh, and this is from uh, a rap song that I really like. It's called "Remember the Name," and it's about like a rapper who's talking about his success and, in general, success in the rap industry. And it goes like, this is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name. And these lyrics uh, are basically a lesson in AI. What are we trying to do with AI and student success? Here's the problem. We want students to be more successful. We want them to get better grades, not fail, learn, have some intrinsic motivation. Those are the things that we want students to do. Right now, what constitutes success? Is it 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will? Because if you see, most of you think that 15% concentrated power of will should probably be about 50%. I mean, there's uh, it, it actually reflects somewhat the results of the poll. Is uncanny that you're saying 5% pleasure, 50% pain. I mean, you have to put in effort. If there is no pain, if there is no effort, how are you going to succeed? I mean, you have to put in effort. Right now, and overall, the problem of AI in student success can be condensed to these 4 lines. You have to identify what are these factors. Is it luck? Is it skill? There is power of will, there is pleasure, and there is pain, right? These are some of the factors. And then the second thing that you need to determine is what percent of what. So how much percent of it is just pure luck? I mean, how many of you just got lucky in an objective exam and got to the college or that you wanted to go to? How much of it is skill? How much of it is actually just motivation, power of will? How much of it is pain, which is the amount of effort you put in? That's really the problem that we're trying to solve using artificial intelligence in student success. Identify, number one, the ingredients, and number two, what percent of what ingredients makes for the perfect recipe. Okay. uh, Now here's a recap of something that you've seen 100 times in the last 2-3 days. So I didn't even put in any effort to get something original. Just went to Google, said, okay, how does AI work? And I just pasted probably the first image I found. And this is something you're all by now familiar with, that there are 5 steps. Again, credits go to somebody else, to be absolutely transparent. I did not make this graphic, but this is the process of AI as we all know it. The first step is getting data. The second is to clean and prepare and manipulate the data. The third is to train a model using the data, using the clean and manipulated data. Uh, the fourth is to test the data, test the results, and then the fifth is to improve. I am going to focus on step 1 and step 2 during this session. Right now, like I said, think of me as a Seat tires shop in a car expo. I am not the Mercedes, which is probably step 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to talk about just the building blocks. How do you get the data, that you need to actually build these models? Now, why do you need data? Uh, it's not just about student success, by the way. If you think about the utility of data, instructors need data to get feedback while they're teaching, to track student progress in the course, to also continuously evaluate and grade the student, especially in times of COVID when exams and midterms have become incredibly difficult. It makes sense to move to a more continuous evaluation kind of a way where you are not measuring students based on how they perform on 2 or 3 days, which is a midterm exam and an end term exam and so on. You want to actually evaluate students based on how much effort do they put in on a day-to-day regular basis. uh, Instructors also need data to experiment with teaching methods. Okay, so I know that 46% of you said that you have not been able to identify an application for AI. How do I get it to 30% in the next lecture? So I need to run that experiment. So maybe if I do something today and it goes from 46% to maybe like 40, say 36%, I know that whatever I'm doing is working. I need to experiment with teaching methods. I want to try something new in class, but how do I know if it's working? It's only if I have feedback, only if I have data. And also to identify at-risk students, students who may potentially not pass the subject, may fail, may get a D, however you define risk. And why do universities need data? It could be slightly different. The first is obviously to boost student retention and student success. That's a university parameter as well for reporting and compliances. And uh, I think some of you are way more aware than me of the compliance requirements in universities. I mean, I'm thankfully I've just had like a little taste of it, and yeah, there's a lot of reporting and compliance work sometimes in departments to inform their online strategy. Why universities also need data to understand what's working and what's not working when they go online. Because as you all know, online is incredibly promising and incredibly difficult. I can, if I were doing this in a room with all 80 of you sitting there, life would be so much easier. It would really be so much easier to have you all sitting in front of me, to be able to look at you, to be able to ask you questions. Somebody raises their hand, somebody says something, I can see your faces, I can see, okay, there's a few people are obviously dozing off, it's too early, etc., etc. I mean, I get all of that feedback all the time. Right now I'm talking to a wall of like profile photos, so it's so much more difficult. So how do I know what's working in my session? How do I know if I have enough energy, or maybe if the content is good enough or not? I need this data to inform what's going to be my online strategy. For disbursement of financial aid, of course, and for academic administration in general, you need data. Right now, how is this data collected in your universities? You would know best. But my guess is it's anywhere between 50% to 80% of this is on paper today. That's been the state of Indian higher education for years and years now. Most of this data regarding student success is collected in registers, and it's basically not digital data, and therefore it's not something that you can possibly use for something like an AI application today. But these are some of the benefits of data. It goes beyond just the student success aspect. Data is needed for like practically everything we do. I mean, it's from teaching a lecture to running the university, it's needed for everything, right? So it's not, the exercise of generating quality data is not just an exercise in building an AI model. It's just a way to save yourself a ton of headache. Why would you not collect data in an easier way if you had the option, is a better question maybe. Right now, coming to the next part, see, learning analytics, this was an observation by this IT strategy and consultancy firm called Gartner, which really struck a chord, which says there has long been a paradox in higher education. For an industry so focused on the pursuit of knowledge and the use of evidence, the industry tends not to apply that same approach internally. As a teacher, we're like, oh, marks are important. Like, if you tell a teacher today, okay, how about you do away with points out of 100? How about if I told you, how would you teach if I asked you to not have marks, if I told you to not have points? You'd probably rubbish me immediately. What do you mean not have marks and not have points? So what do you mean student doesn't score 80%? How else will they know that they're doing well? How else will the university know? How else will the industry know? How else will people know how well somebody is doing unless there is a grade and there is a percentage? A student who scores 40% and a student who scores 80%, if I remove those numbers, 40%, 80%, A, B, C, D, how will they know? How will anyone know how they're doing? Right? So we always focus on like the use of evidence, on the use of data. But in higher education, at the same time, we're guilty of almost never using data. How many of your departments, just to give you a sense of what I mean by when I say this, and again, I mean, this is not a criticism of anyone in particular. It's been the state of higher education, not just in India, in the whole world. Gartner, when they said this, were not talking about the Indian market really. Gartner was talking about higher education around the world. And the paradox is true for all colleges and all universities everywhere, throughout the history of time. If How many of us can claim to have had a department meeting where we discussed, well, there is this one way to teach the Bernoulli's equation, and there is this one way to teach laws of motion, and there is this other way, and seems like the other way is working better. Here's the data, here's the report. How many of us have done that? Well, I mean, I'm not saying nobody. I'm sure some of you may have done it. So please don't be offended when I say this, right? But by and large, we do not use data to inform our instruction. We do not use data to inform university policies, right? And that's where I'm trying to get at. It's not just about artificial intelligence. That is a part of the process. But if you look at just the state of data and analytics itself, it's not, is nowhere close to where it can potentially be. We're talking about all of these points in the previous slide, to get feedback while teaching, to experiment with teaching methods. And you probably nodded your head when I said to experiment with teaching methods, and I gave you that example that you did something, the result was X, you did something else, the result was Y, therefore Y is better than X. You probably nodded your head because it made sense. But if you think about, okay, when have I ever done that? You'll probably realize, well, maybe once, maybe twice, maybe never, right? Definitely not more than 5 or 6 times. You experiment with teaching methods a lot of times. You try these different methods to explain something to the same student, and you say, okay, I mean, I explained this to this student 5 times. They raised their hand. I explained the same thing to this student 5 times. This method worked, and therefore maybe this method is better. So we do that all the time, so, but we're not doing that with data. We're doing that with experience, right? There is a huge difference between the two. Experience and personal lived experience can sometimes lead to disastrously wrong conclusions. uh, Not always. I mean, often, by the way, experience just tallies with common sense, and therefore it's fine, right? But doing things using data is just a more scientific way sometimes of doing things. All right, now let's look at data through two different lenses. To generate data is a question also of discipline, right? You look at, here's what we're doing right now on the right hand side. Here's how we have approached education, at least till March, where I can safely say this is how we approached education. Right? That there's a course, there is a quiz one, midterm one, quiz two, maybe midterm two, end term, couple of homework assignments thrown into it. Right now, that's how we had assessments, and that's how we looked at assessments uh, till COVID forced us all to relook at how we do teaching and learning. And on the left side is something that we are probably doing now, probably not, but okay. Uh, you look at continuous assessment. How many of you, by the way, are familiar with the term? Okay, I'll do just one thing. Just going to ask you all, in case you know about, continuous, if you're familiar with the term continuous assessment, in Zoom, there is this option to send reactions. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you've heard about continuous, if that term is familiar to all of you? Can you just give me a thumbs up? So in Zoom, there is an option to send reactions. I'm not sure if that is enabled though. Again, Mokul sir, I'm going to ask you if that is enabled or not. I realize, it could have been a poll question because I'm using some of these terms that may be, a bit more technical than the others. So just want to understand, if people have heard about this. Probably not. I actually don't see that myself as well. All right, no problem. I'm just going to continue. So continuous assessment is basically saying that, okay, we won't evaluate students based on based on the exams. Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, in the chat we have a bunch of thumbs up. So okay, cool, perfect, great. So see, continuous assessment is basically saying that I won't really just judge people based on how they do in exams. I'm going to judge them every single day. Right now, think about just the learning process, right? Students are in the classroom. Maybe you're teaching a course with like 20 lectures, 30 lectures. They're spending 20 hours of time with you, right? How much data do we generate? Do we have like, do you record attendance? You probably do, right? Do you share these quizzes that people do in class? I'm not sure. Uh, do you conduct these polls, sort of like what we're doing during this session? I'm not sure again, right? There's also quiz one. But if you look at this, on the left hand side, if you include lectures as one of the sources of data, then from 4, you've already gone to 24, right? Just do all of this. Sure, you do all of this, right? Nobody's asking you to remove all of this. Just do this as well. On the left hand side, you have a way to assess people continuously in every single lecture. The number of touch points suddenly gets increased, by something like 600%. And that's an insight, that you are meeting your students practically every single day. uh, I'm sorry, every single week, maybe twice a week. are you doing enough to generate data whenever you meet them? Because it requires effort. You know, I mentioned at the very beginning, the very first question, how are you doing today? And the second option was, didn't sleep too well. So not doing very well. That's what I mentioned. It was actually true for me. That's because I was up last night creating some poll questions that I can share. It takes effort, and it's going to take something from you. Now you are saying, okay, every single class, do I have to think of like 5 poll questions? Well, yes. If, let's say, you want to move to something like continuous assessment, you have to put in effort. The good news is it's not something that you have to do again and again and again. You probably teach 3 or 4 courses. The course design process has to be done once, and you can take it lecture by lecture. Just, you don't have to sit down and just do the whole course redesign on day one. Just go to lecture one. Before you go to class, just think about it a little bit. Go to your phone, go to whatever app you have, create a few questions and just keep them ready. If you think of a question on the spot, create it on the spot. All right, now, uh, so here's the question that I have. So, Mukul sir, can you help me with this? uh, there's a poll question that's going to show up on your screen right now. What tools do you use for teaching and learning? And this is again for me to get a sense of what. So, and you can select multiple again, I hope. Mukus, I just want to ask you actually, can people select multiple options here? Think you can. I think you can. I'm not entirely sure. Mukul, so just one question. It looks like people can only select one option here. Can we just relaunch the poll and allow
Yeah,
people?
just a moment. I'll check.
Sure. All right, everyone. We'll just do the poll again. Just enable one option, which is okay. So the idea in this poll is to select multiple options. So there are a bunch of things that we've written. I'll just give you quick instructions while actually it's good that we take a while, because I just want to mention, okay, so these are the options: video conferencing platform, discussion platform like even WhatsApp, Slack, Piazza, etc. LMS like something like Google Classroom or Moodle if you use it. Online quiz platform, select this option if this is something other than the LMS, that you are using the LMS and then this is on top, or maybe you're not using an LMS, you're using a very specific quizzing tool. Polling tool, again, just select this option if you're not polling people on the LMS. And attendance tool also, if you are actually using a product for attendance other than the LMS, only select this option if that's true. And if there's anything else, and by the way, we can actually just start with the chat. While this, is there anything apart from this that you use? Is there somebody who uses some technology platform to teach that they do not see on the screen and the categories listed on the screen? Is there somebody who's using something very specific? I'll give you an example. Some of you may use, for example, uh, a gaming platform, right? Like you may want to, for example, teach by making students play a game, something like that, right? So maybe if you do something of that sort, you can write it down in the chat. So just go to the chat while we put the poll up. It would be fantastic if you could just go to the chat and then let us know in case there is another platform that you use uh, that's not listed over here. Uh, then just please let us know. Okay, now the question's up on the screen once again. What tools do you use for teaching and learning? So just please, all of you you can select multiple options here. You don't need to select just one. If you use multiple options, multiple things, then just let us know, right? And I'm just going to let this poll run while I sip on some tea. So, all right, we have like about 22 responses so far. So far, so good. Once again, if there's something that's not listed here, please just go to the chat and mention something. Microsoft Teams, again, so that would probably fit into uh, the video conferencing category. Somebody uses online crosswords. That's very interesting. Mentimeter. Mentimeter would probably go into the polling tool category, if I'm not wrong. Peer Deck is interesting, right? Peer Deck is definitely interesting. I have looked at the product. I've never really used it, but it is a product that I do respect tremendously. All right. Okay. So we'll just close the poll in another, say, 10 seconds. So in case you haven't, or actually, let's just go all the way to 2 minutes. So yeah, I mean, please just get all your responses in, and we can probably close in 10 seconds starting now. Google Forms, okay. Understood. All right. All right. So, Mukul sir, can we close the poll? Okay. And you should all now be able to see the results. So here's the thing, right? And again, I mean, this is along expected lines. Firstly, all of you, I mean, most of you are using a video conferencing platform. Those of you who've not used a video conferencing platform, I'm assuming you will use it. If you have to teach a course next semester, maybe you had an off semester and were not teaching a course. LMSs, about 75%. Learning management systems like Google Classroom, Moodle. Some of you may have dabbled with something like Blackboard or Canvas or Edmodo or something like that. About 45% of you have said that you also use discussion platforms. I am guessing of the 17 people who selected discussion platform, at least 15 are using WhatsApp. That's been the primary mode of having discussions with students over here. Online quiz platform, and then a bunch of other things. Attendance tool, if it's not the LMS, about 10%. Now, here's the question, okay? It's clear at this point that we are all using technology. Now, think about the AI problem. Just take a step back. Think about the AI problem once again. We are saying that this is how AI works, right? Like we are saying, this is how AI works. I'm just going to recap the results, and I'm just going to put this up on the screen once again. This is how AI works, right? We've been talking about this now for a while. There is get data, clean, prepare, manipulate data. Those are the first two steps. When you use Google Meet, when you use Zoom, when you use Microsoft Teams, who gets all of this data? Do you get the data? No, right? I mean, we don't get the data as educators. All of this data regarding how much time did somebody attend the meeting for, right? Were they paying attention? These things are not known to instructors. These things are actually known only to Google and Microsoft and Zoom. Discussion platforms, you're using WhatsApp, right? I'm guessing, like I said, at least 15 of the 17 people over here meant WhatsApp. So who's getting that data? Are you getting the data? No, right? That's just Facebook. Facebook knows who sent how many messages. You probably have 55 students in your class WhatsApp group. How many of them are talking, right? That's a good question. And sure, I mean, you probably know vaguely, yeah, I mean, that's a silent one. He never talks and she never talks. And, or maybe the other way around, you know that, okay, these 10 people, I see them talking all the time. They are the ones who just ask a question. The other people just stay silent, and I can see that they've read messages. They stay silent, never say anything, right? You use LMSs. And that's one place finally where you have some data as well. But even in an LMS, how much data do you have? Now let's say you shared a file with the student, and you said, okay, read this before the class tomorrow. Do you know if they've read it before the class? Right? You have data, and don't get me wrong, you have data, right? But big tech has way more data than you about your class. So where's your data, right? Where is the information that you need? It's just not with you. Now that's the point that I want to emphasize and move forward, right? You generate all of this data. You generate every time you teach something on Zoom, you generate data on attendance, you generate data on participation, on discussion statistics, but you don't have it, right? And that's probably the biggest problem with education today. We are not doing what we call in the industry data driven teaching and learning. We generate all of this data, it's not ours to use. We've heard in the last few days about companies like Google coming up with things like TensorFlow. Well, they have you to thank for it, right? TensorFlow is great, and TensorFlow is built on billions and billions of data points. But when you think about teaching and learning, are we doing enough to take control of this data? Because we have our specific problems, right? I'll give you an example, right? Somebody over here mentioned in the chat that one of the reasons why, and this was a provocative statement, and this is probably absolutely true, that one of the reasons why students don't do well is because students are identified based on their caste by faculty members. Now, think about this problem and think about how evil the issue is. And that's a very specific problem that, like it or not, Google has no interest in solving. For that matter, even I myself as a company, if tomorrow I'm selling my product to you, I don't have any interest in solving, but I have an interest in giving you the data so that you can solve the problem. Where is the data is probably the biggest question that we need to answer. And what is our strategy to create that data is something that we'll focus on in the uh, few next few minutes. I think it's about 10:40 right now. We have about 20 more minutes. I'm just going to quickly give you a view of one little thing before we move forward, which is how do you get there's one way is to get data at the classroom level. There's another way to get data at the university level, and there is a third way actually now that exists to actually create data and then share it with everyone across all universities, so that all universities store data in the same format. And I just want you to sort of vaguely remember this term, if possible at all, at the end of the session, something called caliper analytics. This is a standard using which you can actually create data in a specific format that can be accessed by universities around the world. This particular standard, the caliper analytics standard, is something that was developed by this consortium called IMS. And IMS actually defines how do you get this data. Okay, now I'm just going to focus on the rest of the slides. I wrote those slides, but then I realized, well, I mean, I don't really need those slides in there, because I'm just going to show you one way to actually solve this issue. So I'm just going to share my screen once again. So this time I am going to share with you Academy itself. Now, here's what we do. Okay. So I am wondering if you can see my screen right now. So just one question. Can you see the Academy screen right now?
Yes, class 99.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Now I'm just going to come to the solution straight away. Something that we are doing is helping professors teach in a data-driven manner. Now I'm looking at the other monitor over here. So I have two laptops. That's the sort of setup I have over here. Okay. Now Academy is a platform that professors can use inside the classroom, whether they're teaching online or face-to-face. It focuses on generating data, giving it to instructors. It focuses on giving professors the ways to generate data. Right now, it's like I said, it can be used in both face-to-face as well as online classes. So firstly, let me show you the online use case. Now, this is Academy with Zoom integration. So this video that you see on your screen, we don't actually develop the video conferencing ourselves. We embed Zoom inside Academy. So this is Zoom. This over here is an instructor inside Academy. And on this other window, this over here is a student inside Academy. Okay, so once again, this, let me just go back to the professor interface. This is the professor, and this is a video conference. This is the class on Academy. On the right, the professor and the students can talk to each other. Now we filled the platform with opportunities to generate data. It's not just about, so when people write comments, here's the comment, and the number of comments is a great indicator. the other thing is, how good was this comment? And how can you tell how good this comment was? Put in a like feature. People are going to like each other's comments, and by looking at the number of likes somebody is getting, you can possibly say something about the quality of what they're contributing to the class, right? So here's a discussion. It's visible to the professors, to the students. Everyone can see this discussion. And over here, you can also attach things like images, attach files. You can also put in math equations over here. You can just go in and type in a math equation and use it directly. Here's a way to embed a math equation. So you can actually type equations in your messages. It's built for higher education, right? Now, you can also, over here, share activities, things like polls, videos, discussions, quizzes with your students. And right now, the students can't see your video. Just go in and say, so for example, when the student joins your class, they see this. So it's like an interactive waiting room. When you join Zoom, you just get this window where the host will let you in. On Academy, it's just an interactive waiting room. This is where the student is. They don't see that, they see that the class is not begun, but they can still go in and, as a student, I can still go chat with my classmates. I can, write messages over here. Other people can also go like and thank comments, etc. Now, whenever the professor wants, they can just say, start broadcast. Right now, the broadcast has started. And over here on the student side, I will just join the meeting, right? So it's as simple as that. The professor starts the meeting and the student joins the meeting. Now, all of this data regarding discussions, number one, can be exported. So you can see, okay, these are the students. These are the number of messages per student. These are the number of likes per student. These are the number of thanks per students. In fact, not just that, there are 3 reactions over here. So as a student, by the way, I've joined the meeting now. As a student, I can go like a comment, or here this gift icon is an option to thank the comment. So I can like or thank. And a thank is obviously a little bit better than a like. Very few people want to thank somebody. And as an instructor, you can actually say, okay, somebody is liking some comment for some stupid reason. As an instructor, you can have a better reason. So you can actually go in and grade every single comment. So this icon that you see on your screen over here on the right side allows you to actually grade a student on a scale of 10. So you can tap this and you can actually give the student points on a scale of 10, right? And this data regarding grading every single comment, even that, you can export. So your students can go create some data. You can also go create some data of your own, right? Now, the other thing is recording attendance. I mean, it needs to be simple. I mean, I know recording attendance is such a big pain point. Even at the end of this meeting, we'll go through that issue, when I'm sure all the administrators dread that part. Well, okay, we'll have to take screenshots, then there will have to be a way to digitize it. It's a pain, right? Here's how you take attendance on Academy. Just go in and say record attendance, and now you're recording attendance, right? You see that 0 students are here. So at this time, what does the student see? I'll just switch over to the student interface. The student sees this message, right? And the student just has to respond by saying yes or no. And we've just put a placeholder over here. It's a feature that we're releasing this week itself. Like I said, we're a startup. Don't judge us right now for how things. I'm showing you the under development version, and yeah. So just go in and say yes. So the student has indicated that they're there, and I can see that one student is here. Now, as a professor, I can see back here on my screen that one student has indicated that they were there. And this is where I see that, right? One student is here. Once again, I can just stop recording attendance by clicking this button. So once I stop the attendance process, I can record attendance again. So that's another option I have over here. I can also, by the way, go to the attendance tab once again and see here a list of all the students, and I can see how many of them have responded to the attendance check, and therefore they have been marked present. The others have not been marked present. So I mean, just joining the meeting is not enough. You actually have to respond, right? Because if you're there and you're just not going to respond to anything, you're as good as absent. So once again, the professor goes in and says record attendance, and this over here, the student sees this message and they have to say yes. If they say yes, then the professor sees that one student is here, And then in the attendance tab, I stop attendance, and then in the attendance tab, I'll be able to get a report at the end that the student has indicated in both the checks. So I recorded attendance twice, and in both the checks, the student said that they were there. So I can just record attendance as many times as I want during the class, and this keeps students on their toes. The students cannot leave the screen. I know, a lot of us just record attendance once during the session. That means I log in at 9, I come back at 11, because I know that's when the attendance is going to be. Keeps them on their toes. This over here is one great way to actually just keep the student interested throughout the meeting. You're not checking for attention. So you're not checking for attendance, you're checking for attention. Are you paying attention right now? Right. The other thing is this. When I go here, you can see that my video has collapsed into a corner. So this is the professor once again. So my video has collapsed here. And if I come back, the video goes here. I can also go into a full screen mode. Right now, I can also share quizzes and polls with my class. So for example, I have these activities that I can share with the class. I created them beforehand, but if I want to create something right now, I just go in and say I want to create an activity. Just tap the add button, say I want to create an in-class activity or whatever, quiz, poll, discussion, learning resource. Just to tell you, poll is to get feedback. Poll is what we use just now in Zoom as well. Learning resource is a video. I can share a video with the class. It could also be a file. It could also be a link. Discussion is to actually share an open-ended discussion question. And then there is quiz. So let me show you a quiz that's obviously of great interest to us all as academics. So let me go to the quiz option. I have a bunch of questions over here. Again, my questions can have things like equations inside, images inside. My options also can have the same sort of thing. And whenever I want to share the quiz, I just go in and say publish the quiz. Now, once I publish the quiz, here's the student. So the student sees that the quiz has been published. They get notified over here. This is the notification. And the student also sees the quiz. So if the student goes in and attempts the quiz, I can see I have about 50 seconds to go. And at the same time, I can see the professor's video. So what we have done with Acadly is, if you think of Zoom, you have 80% of the area is for the video, and then there's like 10% on the right, 20% on the right for the chat. We've tried to flip that ratio, that students in a class they need to be doing things. I mean, of course, they can watch the professor. They can just go into a full screen mode and watch the professor. But there should be enough real estate for people to do things. Simple as that. So as a student, if I go in and attempt the quiz, at this time, I can just go in and select my options. I'm just attempting the quiz. There's a timer at the bottom. When I have 10 or fewer seconds left, it starts showing me a warning. I better hurry up. And if I don't hurry up and I miss the deadline, if I don't click the submit button, then Acadly is still going to give me a last chance. I can submit now. If I don't submit still, it just submits automatically. And as a student, now I have my result. I have scored 12 out of 20. So there's an auto submit feature over here. And if you go in here as a professor, the professor can see that there has been one submission so far. Instantly during the class, you can look at the results. You don't need to. So in Zoom, for example, I've been sharing these polls, right? I can't see who's said what. I don't have individual level responses. I can, at the end of the meeting, I can go and export that from Zoom in the settings somewhere. I don't know where it is. But that's too much work, right? I want to know right away who said what. I want to know which of my students. I know that, okay, here's the problem child. This student is clearly struggling. The poor guy has not scored more than 10% in any of the quizzes so far. I'm really interested in this guy. And today the fact that he scored 60% is a win for me as an educator. I can also just export these results to an Excel, right? Now, over here, I also can check for every single question. Okay, so question number 2 is the really difficult question. I know, you might get everything else, but question 2 is like the most difficult question over here. So I can just go and look at the analytics for question number 2 and say, okay, how many people said option A? How many people said option B? Option A, by the way, was right. So it was attempted correctly by one student. And all of these scores, right, can also be exported from Acadly. That's the third data point now that we've talked about, right? So just to recap, you're teaching, right? But you can export the discussion stats. You can export the attendance stats. Not only can you export, you can create the data, right? You can create the attendance data with like incredible ease now. You can create the discussion data. Well, you don't have to do anything. Just use the chat. The discussion data will just appear. It is possible to create quality data, right? By using the likes and the thanks and the rewards. we are just piling on layer on layer on layer on top of what kind of data there is, and it just looks like a product. But what it really is a data generation mechanism, also, cloaked as a teaching and learning product. It is meant to give professors and to give universities the sort of data they need. You can also share things like discussions. So here's a discussion. So you just publish this. Let's say I publish this discussion, share it with the class, right? So I just shared this discussion with the class. Now the students see the discussion. So I just click on this discussion. I open this up, and let's say the students start talking to the professor. So I just say something over here, and I'm just going to, for example, for the sake of this particular uh, demonstration, I'm just going to go in and
Hello, Vaibhav.
yes, sir.
Can it be possible to add me, because I am currently in acad leave, and log
Oh,
in?
okay.
So
Okay.
I can be your student in this class.
Sir, the problem is, I think your account is associated with MES Pune, right?
Yes.
Right. So on Academy, when you add students, if they're associated with another university, then you can't add them. So you can only add people who are not associated with any university or are already associated with your
No,
university.
no. I am asking. You can add me as your student for this class.
Right. I can't. That's what I was trying
Oh,
to say.
okay, okay, okay,
Because yeah, I mean that's basically a thing in the product. So okay,
okay,
I'm just going to show you very quickly. Here's, for example, some there's this chat going on, right? The class is talking. So for example, I asked you, what are the factors that affect student success? And all of you had some things to say about like student sincerity, student interest, and so on. Now you said a lot of things, right? Now suddenly I ask you a question, there are like 20 responses. Now I took the time to actually read them out one by one, but let's say if you're asking your class a slightly lengthier question and like there are like 80 responses here, because now there is also that attendance thing hanging on their head, so everybody's paying attention all the time, and you have like 80 responses, you maybe cannot go through all 80 responses immediately. What you can, however, do is go here and show the class a word cloud. Those of you who've used Mentimeter might remember this, might bring back fond memories. You can just create a word cloud, right? And this just summarizes what the class is saying. You don't need to actually read everything, all the factors. So for example, if a lot of people are saying student interest is a big problem, the word interest will just be shown here in a larger font. Basically what this word cloud is doing is just taking up it's just going to rely on the frequency of appearance of a particular term. So for example, and this word cloud is generated automatically. So for example, I'm just going to add some more text over here. So as and when this text gets added, this particular word cloud, as you can see, keeps getting updated. So now the word learning data is becoming larger and larger and larger, right? So you can see that this discussion is evidently about learning data, right? Which it is, by the way. This discussion is entirely about learning data. So that's a great insight, right? I mean, what I'm copying the text from, by the way, this blog post is where I've written some of the points that I'm talking to you about right now, right? So, for example, if you might remember this as a slide. So, okay, so that's how you can create this data, not just like in tables, but also visual. Make it visual for the student as well. Now, that's just the gist of what we do. There's a lot more in Academy that I could have probably touched upon. I'm just going to show you one last thing and then end the presentation, which is you can also, and I'm just going to share. Uh, 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 all right. So I'm just going to share one more thing, and then maybe we can break. Which is that now where does AI come in? Once you have the data, number one, you can use it to develop your own AI models. But we do some of it ourselves as well, right? Now, Academy is really like this incredible, like I said, data generation machine. It's creating all of this data in real time. Every single lecture, when you use Academy, we generate a ton of data. Now we can give you the raw data. That's one way in which we can work. You can just have like Excel files where you can have like data point upon data point. And let me actually show you the data point first of all. So just going back to sharing my screen for a second. Uh, uh, all right. So what you see on your screen right now is this Excel. Now this is, for example, the sort of data point that we can give you. Just get all the students, get their attendance status for every single lecture. This amount of data is just for one course. Just multiply that with the thousands or the hundreds of courses in your university. That's your data source. And this is just the attendance data, by the way. Here's the quiz data. Every single class, you can see how much did the student score. If they did not attempt, if they were late, that's what the L tells you, that the student was late. So these are the students, right? These are all the students. Each row is a student. These are quizzes. So quiz number 1, quiz number 2, quiz number 3. When did it happen? Was it a pre-class quiz? What is it? Was it an in-class quiz? How much did the students score? Did they not attempt? Were they late or were they on time? Right? What was the class average? All of these data points are, number one, available to you in an Excel file. Whether it's attendance, whether it's quizzes, whether it's polls, even discussion statistics, how many comments, how many likes, all of this is available to you, number one, in a single format for the whole university. And the other way is we do some of this ourselves. So I'm just going to quickly show you this, and I'm sorry for going over time at this point, but I'm quickly going to show you this. This is Academy's own data generation. Our own AI engine over here. What I'm showing you right now is Academy's plugin opening up within a learning management system. This works with certain learning management systems like Moodle, Blackboard, Canvas, and we're also working on things like that can act as a standalone version. But as Academy, as a tool provider ourselves, if you as a professor are using Academy for your courses, and let's say if you as a university are using Academy for your courses, we go a level above and we say, okay, for every single student, we are going to give you alerts. So this alert that you see next to the student's name, you can see this is the student, these are the number of courses, this is their average attendance, and this button tells you that this student is quote unquote at risk. If you open this up, you will get to see this is the student. This is why we are saying that they are at risk. We are going to say for every single week, what was the student's involvement with the course across 6 different parameters. Attendance, but that's just one. There's also performance in things like quizzes and assignments, preparedness for these lectures, participation, regularity, and engagement. So across all these parameters, we're going to judge the student week after week after week, just tell you high, medium, low, give you this data. And then what you do with this data is you inform your student success initiative and you figure out how to work with your student. You know that, for example, let's say there is a student who's in this category, very high attendance, very poor performance. You know that this is not a sincerity question. This student is sincere, right? This student is attending every single class, he's paying attention, even then they're performing poorly. It's a comprehension issue. You probably need to tutor the student better. Whereas let's say there's this other student who's just not coming to class, but is still doing really well. Well, this is a really bright student. Maybe you shouldn't push them to attend too many classes, maybe because they're doing fine already. And then there is this third case, somebody who's not coming to class and are doing very poorly. Make them come to class one way or the other. So this is the level of insight that you can get. You can also see, okay, if somebody is performing really poorly, let's say that this is very low, somebody is very low, and let's say their attendance is still, so this is a student who's very low on performance, their attendance is fine. So what is wrong? Okay, what is wrong is they're not participating in class. They're attending, but they don't participate. They don't respond to the polls. They just like don't care. Right? So make them participate. So that's the sort of insight that we give you ourselves. All of this is based on our own machine learning and AI algorithms that try and understand student behavior continuously as you teach. And we try to, again, give this data to you. in both the raw format as well as the processed format. And well, on that note, I'm just going to stop the presentation here. I really want to thank all of you for taking the time. I know I've gone slightly above the time limit, but I would really, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I'm still available in case you have any questions. Just one single thing is, Mukul sir, can you please share both the polls? So there are two more polls just for us to get feedback on how good this session was. So Mukul sir, can you please put poll number 5 up on the screen for everyone? All right, so just select one option. What is your next step after this session? You want to put some of this into practice. You will, or you want to, or you don't want to. I mean, I mean, just nobody's looking into these results. These are practically anonymous polls. So I mean, it's and it's absolutely, if you think it's too much work, if you think it's just like a ton of information, it's completely understandable, because yeah, I mean, again, nobody's looking into these poll results. So that's why, I mean, I just meant to like make it clear. So we have about like 40 responses again, which is about, I think, the number of responses we have been getting so far. 41. All right, so just like maybe 10 more seconds and then we'll close the poll, Mukul sir. By the way, that, the screen that I was showing you at the end, and here are the results, by the way. We are making progress. We just did a student success exercise. This is great. I mean, we just did a student success exercise. We did a whole session and we got feedback immediately. I mean, we're not taking this advert. I mean, if actually 56% of you go back and put this into practice, which is actually more like 25%, given that there are 80 participants overall, 84 participants, it's perfect. I mean, it's a lot. And sir, finally, can we have the last poll, if possible? The last poll is about Acadly itself. So I just showed you the product. I just want to understand again, for my understanding, if it is something that you would be interested in. If you are, just go to acadly.com, and one thing is, to use Acadly, you need to sign up with your official university email address. So if you want to use Acadly, there is a free version, there is a paid version, etc., etc. But to get access to the free version, you need to sign up with your official university email address. So please don't sign up with a Gmail address or a Yahoo address or a Hotmail address or something like that. So for example, if you have an email address like @mespune.ac.in, sign up with something like that, because that helps us verify. And it's a student data security requirement that we are supposed to comply with. So yeah, I mean, that's basically why. So I just wanted to mention once again, if you go to acadly.com, acadly.com, you can sign up for a free account, which does not have the Zoom integration. It has the other features. And I'd be more than happy to tell you the differences, etc. We can take that conversation offline, what the product does, what is this version, what is that version, etc., etc. I'll just take all of that offline, and I'd be happy to talk to each of you personally on the phone, help you understand how it can work. But yeah, just make sure that you sign up with your university email address. If you do not have a university email address, just write to me. If you're interested in using Acadly, just write to me, let me know. So this is my email address in the chat, vaibhav@acadly.com, or you can just write to us through whatever channel you can find, and we would be more than happy to help you set up your account. So thank you so much. I'm just ended the poll, and thank you so much for being so participative. It has been a pleasure. It was a fantastic opportunity. Once again, thank you to Vaidya sir, thank you to Mukul sir, thank you to everyone who's arranged this fantastic FTP, and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Actually, we are already running late, so we cannot take up the question. So you can just, I ask the participant to just post the question in the chat box. We will send it to you across directly. And I
Absolutely.
think you already shared the email ID, so
Yes.
participant can also directly communicate with you also, right?
Perfect. Perfect.
Darshana madam, Darshana madam.
Okay, sir. On behalf of Team IMCC and all participants, we sincerely thank Vaibhav Vashisht sir for accepting our invitation and delivering the talk. We really appreciate and thank you, sir, for your excellent session. And thank you so much for the demo. I must say, Academy is an excellent educational AI software, and from all teachers' point of view, it's very useful. So we look forward to use it in the future, and we look forward to connect with you again in our future events also. I would also like to thank all the participants for enthusiastically and actively attending this session.